All right, guys, I might be a little bit late on this particular topic, but I think given my recent video uploads and, of course, the hashtag Black Fatigue thing going viral, this is absolutely relevant. So, an American black woman moved to Russia to escape the discrimination and racism, and to say that she effed around and found out is a gross understatement. So let's take a look at this report by the New York Post. Here we go.
A black woman who moved from the U.S. to Russia to escape discrimination and racism revealed on social media that the entire plan backfired on her in a disturbing way. Francine Villa was born in Russia but moved to the U.S. with her family when she was a kid. In a heartbreaking video, Francine claims that both she and her baby were brutally attacked by racist neighbors in Moscow. She detailed the alleged assault on Instagram.
I don't know why she thought Russia was going to be better for her than in the U.S.
Now, the fact that the attack occurred in her homeland is an extra painful blow. Villa had previously spoken about her move in the 2020 documentary Back in the USSR, which aired on the Russian state media channel RT. Villa said that her great-grandfather, George Tynes, who hails from Virginia, worked as an agriculturalist.
Unc had some swag, didn't he?
Union in the 1930s.
Check him out.
Now, much of her family still lives there, but at a young age, she moved with her mother to the United States. It was there that she spent most of her life until experiencing what she described as a traumatizing experience with police. Villa explained in the documentary that she approached officers for help during an emergency, but that they turned on her instead, throwing her to the ground. It was then that she decided it was time to leave. That was back in 2019. Here is how she explained it. Quote, "Why did I make up my mind to move to Russia? I wanted to leave a country where I was facing discrimination. After a year living in Moscow, she told RT, quote, I feel free living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe." 5 years later, that proved to be a fantasy. Following the alleged attack, Villa took to Instagram with blood still on her face, saying a couple in her apartment building beat her with fists while she was with her 2-year-old and yelled racial slurs at her in Russian. In edited footage shared by Villa of the incident, the couple can be seen arguing with her in the hallway of her building, threatening to throw out her belongings while she was seemingly blocked from entering her own apartment.
Вы в России давно живете? Почему вы ко мне на «ты»?
Я не могу выйти и входить в свою квартиру. Напугает моего ребенка.
Он пуганный, плачет, бедняжка. Зайка, ты плачешь, да? Плачешь.
Now, she accuses her neighbors of changing the locks, cutting off the electricity, and even tossing her baby's stroller down the stairs. She also claims her child was left with bruises following the incident. In footage taken from a hospital, Villa can be seen weeping in distress in the aftermath of this alleged attack. She says she's filed complaints to the police, but claims they aren't helping or responding.
Surprise, surprise. Ay, 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 ay. Guys, first thing I want to point out here is how absolutely stupid this woman is for having done this. Never in my 48 years, and I mean never, have I ever heard someone say out loud, screw America and their racism, I'm going to Russia. Chick, you were lucky enough to come to the United States, the land of opportunity. Your mother moved out here for a reason. This is the country with one of the worst, if not the worst, mass illegal immigration problems in the world because of those opportunities. And what did you do? You chose to buy into the false victimhood of black people in America. There's racism everywhere, guys. We all know that. But the fact that black Americans in this country that think that they're oppressed and constant victims of racism and discrimination poisoned this woman's mind into thinking the grass was going to be greener on the other side. Well, unfortunately for Miss Villa, not only was the grass not green on the other side, the grass had about 6 inches of snow on it, both literally and figuratively, pun definitely intended. Black people in America have it so good here that they have absolutely zero clue what it's like in other countries. These people don't travel enough to realize that there are other countries in the world that are far more racist than America. Well, there shouldn't be racism anywhere, Donovan, but there is. And you can either deal with it and do your level best to avoid proving those stereotypes, or you can bitch and moan and pretend that you are being oppressed in what is quite literally the greatest country in the world, especially for blacks. Black people in this country have no idea that other countries haven't had a civil rights movement like we've had in America. There were no Medgar Evers in Europe. There were no Martin Luther King Jr.'s in Japan. There were no Malcolm X's overseas. And as a result, racism has been allowed to fester and even to some degree become a part of the culture of a lot of the countries abroad. But because the so-called black community only focuses on all the BS narratives from the left, Democrats and race hustlers like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Jamel Hill, and Mark Lamont Hill, they don't realize just how great we have it here. So she was really, really freaking stupid to do this. So let's talk a little bit about the alleged straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Miss Villa's decision to flee the tyranny here in the United States. According to her, like we saw in the video, she was traumatized by the cops. Okay, she says that she called the cops or she approached the cops because of some emergency. She says the cops turned on her and threw her to the ground. Guys, this is absolute BS. She, like most black people who get in trouble with the law, is clearly leaving out details about the interaction that holds her accountable for things going sideways. There is absolutely no way she approached the cops and said, "Help, I have an emergency." And then the cops, all of a sudden, for no reason at all, just decided to put her in a chokehold on the ground. Now, I ain't buying it. I guarantee you she did something to instigate the cops, just like we see all the time on the Hard R podcast. She probably mouthed off. Maybe she assaulted the cops. Maybe she even spit on one of them. Whatever the case may be, she was responsible for what happened to her that night. She was just looking for a reason to leave this country based on this discrimination and oppression of black people. I do not buy her BS story for 1 second, because we have seen hundreds of police videos where black people request the assistance of law enforcement and end up in the handcuffs. Why? Because they don't know how to act. Sorry, Miss Villa, you're a liar. I don't know what happened that night with the cops, but I know what didn't. And what didn't happen was the version of events that you gave. Now let's talk about the way she's being treated in Russia. So she says the first year, everything was great. Everything was fine and dandy. Everything was peaches and cream and hunky-dory. But then all of a sudden, things went off the rails. All of a sudden, she's being harassed. All of a sudden, she's being assaulted. All of a sudden, the cops won't do anything about it and so forth. But what nobody is asking is why this is happening to her. Now, is it because Russians are racist towards black people? Possibly. Or could it be because of the way she's acting? Definitely. Let's unpack both of those possibilities, shall we? We saw in the video the confrontation that she had with her neighbors where they allegedly blocked her from getting into her apartment, right? They yelled at her. She says they assaulted her, her child, and so on and so forth. Is it possible that her neighbors were racist and did this to her because they just don't like black people? Absolutely. Anything's possible. And if that is the case, she looks stupid. Remember, she left the United States to avoid this kind of thing, right? And wouldn't you know it, her neighbors gave her a hard time for no other reason but that she's black. On the other hand, it is far more likely that this confrontation happened because of something she did or said. Why do I say this? Because American black women are always, and I mean always, in some sort of confrontation or dispute or have some sort of problem with their neighbors. And given their history, it is far more likely that the reason this confrontation happened, like we saw in the video, is because of something she did. Take a look at this picture. This chick is throwing up the black power fist in Russia. Now, this is fine on its face, but this is the kind of behavior that causes unrest in America. What the hell did she think was going to happen in Russia? Now, why am I showing this picture, you ask? Because if she is willing to do this in public and get photographed, how do you think she's going to act when nobody's looking? How do you think she's going to act when there are no cameras running? She was probably a very difficult neighbor to live with. Maybe she was leaving her trash in common areas. Maybe she was being too loud. Maybe she wasn't following the building rules like a lot of black women tend to do when they live in big buildings with other people. Maybe her kid was too loud. Maybe her kid was running around the building bothering people. There are a myriad of scenarios that could have played out there that regularly play out here in the US. But Donovan, watch the video. She's being harassed by her neighbors for no reason. We don't know that. We aren't privy to what happened before she turned on the camera, right? Because remember, women, particularly black women, love to frame themselves as victims of violence and oppression for just no reason at all. She wants us to believe that her neighbors just decided for no reason to start harassing her, assaulting her, and given the reputation of American black women, I just don't believe it. I guarantee you she had every bit as much to do with this dispute as her neighbors, but of course, she'll leave that part out. And if race was a factor, again, it just proves that she made the wrong decision. Because if what happened to her with her neighbors in Russia happened here in the United States, that situation would go viral. Those white neighbors would be doxxed, they'd be fired from their jobs, the city would be burned down because N-words are always looking for a reason to loot and act like monkeys. I mean, it would have been all over the internet. But in that same vein, she would actually have recourse in the United States in this particular situation. You see, the Russian cops didn't do anything about that situation. And looking at the picture she posted, it appears that she had more than enough photographic evidence of some sort of assault. I mean, I'm fairly certain she didn't assault herself, though one never knows for sure, just given that a lot of women have assaulted themselves in an attempt to get a man locked up unjustly. But the fact that the evidence wasn't enough for Russian law enforcement to intervene proves once again the grass was not greener on the other side. So, while it is possible that her neighbors were racist and just looking for a reason to harass and assault her, it is far more probable that she is at the very least partially responsible for the way her neighbors treated her. And when I make judgment calls, gentlemen, I base my opinion on probabilities, not possibilities. Just because something is possible doesn't mean it's probable. And better than 9 times out of 10, the probable scenario is usually closer to the version of what really happened. But Donovan, they blocked her from getting into her own apartment. They threw a stroller down the stairs, changed the locks, and cut off her electricity. Yes, they did. But would you like to know why? Because she had been evicted. But she ain't tell you that though, did she? Like every other scenario, she leaves out the part where she was responsible for the situation she was in. And apparently in Russia, they don't play around with evictions. Like if you don't pay the rent, you're up out of there. There's no 30-day grace period. There's no paperwork they have to file with the court. There's no waiting for the sheriff to come and kick you out. There's none of that. They change the locks, they cut the power, and you ain't getting back in. Unlike America, they don't have squatters' rights in Russia. And Miss Villa once again found out the hard way that Russia ain't America. And as a matter of fact, she should actually thank the neighbors for throwing her stroller down the stairs, because if they hadn't, she probably wouldn't have that either. And as a side note, I find it hard to believe that the neighbors actually assaulted her child. Remember in the report, she said that the child had bruises or was left with bruises, right? Even the worst people understand that children are innocent to some degree and are a product of their environment. So now we ask the question, how did her baby get those bruises? I don't know. But given that we know that American black women routinely put their children in physical danger and worse, assault and kill their children, remember the Atlanta mother who cooked her 2 children in an oven? Remember the Baltimore woman who killed her sister children and drove around with their decomposing bodies in her trunk? Remember Brandy Pierce, the Detroit mother who killed her son, buried him in a shallow grave, then moved to the state of Georgia? I would not be one bit surprised if Francine Villa didn't cause those bruises herself. Yeah, I said it. I wouldn't be surprised. And to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of you would be either. Back when I lived in Atlanta, I worked for a mattress delivery company. My job was to deliver mattresses all over Atlanta to residences and businesses. I absolutely loved that job. Anyway, there was one dude there, as usual, who was always talking about racism this and racism that and the white man this and the white man that. So what I did one day is I showed him a snippet of a short ESPN documentary entitled The Beautiful Game Turned Ugly, which highlighted the openly racist soccer fans overseas. And for those of you who are still convinced that America is the most racist country in the world, you need to pay attention right here. And again, this is fair use. Read the captions. You are a son of a bleep whether you are black or orange. You are garbage. Look at this.
Carlos Kameni is from Cameroon in West Africa. He plays goal for the Spanish club team Espanyol, one of the strongest teams in perhaps the strongest league in the world. But even fans in his own stadium shower him with racist slurs and bananas. Wow. When Zorro next played Inter Milan, some fans held up a banner that read, "Peanuts and bananas are the pay for your infamy."
My God.
3 months after the Zorro incident, Samuel Eto'o, a striker for Barcelona and one of the world's best players, found himself in a similar situation. Eto'o, like Kameni from Cameroon, was playing on the road at Zaragoza, home to some of Spain's most openly racist fans. Wow. Angry and frustrated by the monkey chants that resounded every time he touched the ball, Eto'o repeatedly cried, "No mas, no more."
I would strongly advise that anyone who still believes that America is the most racist country in the world, you need to watch that video. All you got to do is go to YouTube and type in "The Beautiful Game Turned Ugly." Trust me when I tell you, it is going to change your life if you are ready to stop being a racial idolater. But even after watching that, I know that some of you will still double down and stick with your BS narrative. You niggas who bitch and moan about how racist America is, I would strongly suggest that you get your passport and do a little bit of traveling. Go to Europe, go to Japan, go to China, go to Spain, go to Portugal, travel the world, come back, and then you can tell me how racist America is. And if you don't believe me, ask Brittany Griner. That woman learned firsthand how much better life is in America for black people when she damn near got locked up for life in a Russian prison for cannabis oil. The funny thing is that when she did do an interview after returning from Russia, she did an interview with ESPN Stan Verrett on whether or not she had been overseas since her return to America, and she made it clear she was going nowhere. Take a look and listen.
Everyone knows what you went through in Russia. Have you traveled internationally since you got back home?
No, I have not. I've been right here on U.S. soil.
That's right, y'all. She stayed her ass right here in the land of opportunity, as she should. And I guarantee you, whether she admits this or not, she thanked her lucky stars that the red, white, and blue came to the rescue of her ungrateful anti-American ass. Another important point I'd like to make about Miss Villa is that she has now been a victim of police brutality in 2 different countries. My take here is that if you're getting into scuffles with law enforcement on 2 different continents, maybe that's a you problem. If 2 different law enforcement entities on 2 different continents have a problem with you, then you might be the common denominator. The bottom line here, guys, is that this woman hit the lottery when she was able to move to America as a child, okay? There's a reason why her mother moved from Russia to America with her. There is a reason why immigrants are trying to get into this country in droves, legally or otherwise. This chick was handed the golden ticket to come to America for a better life, and she allowed herself to be poisoned by the degenerate cesspool of the so-called black community. Black people have it better here than any other country in the world by a country mile. Yet this woman was convinced by black people and race hustlers that she was being oppressed and discriminated against. So what does she do? She makes the ill-advised decision to move to a country that is not only treating her worse, they don't seem to care. At least in America, she'd be listened to, right? But as I say all the time, some lessons can be taught, but most lessons have to be learned. Hopefully, Miss Villa now appreciates that golden opportunity that she was afforded when she came to this country as a child. Myron Gaines famously said that privilege is invisible to those who have it. And Francine Villa is now the poster child for that axiom. So Miss Villa, if you are watching, I would strongly advise you to contact Brittany Griner. Maybe then she can tell you firsthand there ain't no victim card in Russia. Hopefully she can talk some sense into you if your experience hasn't already done that for you. Be sure to tune in today at 3 p.m. Pacific on Rumble for today's dating show play-by-play breakdown. We're actually doing Love is Blind. I think we're going to do episode 10, which is, the last of the weddings. And then, of course, tomorrow I think we're going to do the reunion. Guys, these are very, very educational live streams that have been instrumental in the success of a lot of my students in the dating market. Thanks for watching.